And courage we will need as our story moves onward. For at some point, everyone's journey must make its bold crossing. Through the cold wood of sorrow. A passage the Pevensey children took in their first trip to Narnia.
The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Peter, Susan, Edmund and Lucy are sent out of London to live with an old professor during the bombing raids of World War II. While playing a game of hide-and-seek, they stumble upon a wardrobe that leads to the world of Narnia. There they find a sorrowful land frozen into eternal winter by an evil white witch.
In the year 1908, my happy childhood vanished. In the winter, my mother grew ill with cancer. By the end of summer, she was gone.
In the space of 1 year, his grandfather, his uncle, and then his mother all died of cancer in that large house. So that house went from becoming a place of adventure to a place of tremendous loss and pain.
With my mother's death, all settled happiness, all that was tranquil and reliable, disappeared from my life. There was to be no more of the old security. It was sea and islands now. The great continent had sunk like Atlantis.
He had been told that if he prayed hard enough, his mother would get well. And he said prayer was like his hands. Everything broke in his hands. And so God went from a cosmic magician who could do whatever little Jack Lewis wanted to someone who was there to inflict pain on us.
Some people would say that after he lost his mother, he lost his father as well, because his father was so upset that he reacted in a very emotional and very extreme way.
My father's misery and terror paralyzed and alienated us. Instead of comforting each other's suffering, we only grew further apart. 3 weeks after my mother's death, he sent us away to boarding school in England.
Albert Lewis managed to find perhaps the worst school in all of England to send his child to. It was indescribably horrible. The headmaster was eventually committed to an insane asylum. The man was a sadistic maniac. And he used to flog the children mercilessly.
I spent 7 years at 3 different boarding schools, of which 2 were horrid. I never hated anything so much. Indeed, the story of my torment at the hands of teachers and classmates is far too horrid to tell you here.
His great salvation from all of this was when his father, faced with Jack's threats of suicide, eventually took him out of the school.
In 1914, I went to live with a private tutor, a bony old man with a bushy white moustache and sideburns called W.T. Kirkpatrick. My family dubbed him the Great Knock, because of his great fondness for knocking over other people's arguments.
W.T. Kirkpatrick had been a former head of a school to which Lewis's father had attended. And Lewis went to study one-on-one with Kirkpatrick for the purpose of preparing for admission to Oxford. And it's to the Great Knock that one can attribute Lewis's rigorous exercise of clear logic.
Kirkpatrick appears in Narnia as Professor Kirk, the old man the children are sent to live with in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe.
Jack's intellect developed enormously. When he left Kirkpatrick, Jack was fluent in many languages, and he was also reading ancient Greek. His Latin was very good, his French was excellent. I think he had Italian by that stage as well. So Jack left Kirkpatrick to go to take up a scholarship that he'd won at Oxford University.
By the time I reached Oxford, I was living 2 separate lives. In my imagination, I was still dreaming and aching with desire for another world. But in my real life, the sorrows of my youth had turned me into a pessimist and an intellectual snob. I was certain God did not exist. Yet I was angry with God for not existing, and even angrier with him for creating this menacing and unfriendly world.
Hello, I'm Peter Cousin. I'm a taxi cab driver in Oxford. In actual fact, people have told me that I look like C.S. Lewis. It was about 20 years ago. I got flagged down by an American lady who wanted to go and see the house where C.S. Lewis lived. She was telling me all about C.S. Lewis, and so I bought the Hooper biography, and that generated my interest in C.S. Lewis. Prior to that, all I'd ever read was sort of books about sort of motorcycles and cars and things like that. I now take people on tours in connection with C.S. Lewis, and he sent me back to church as well. I attend church on a Sunday as regular as I can. OK, if you come along with me, I'll take you on a tour of Oxford, and I'll show you the life of C.S. Lewis. He first came up to Oxford in 1917 and went to University College, which is just down there. A lot of Americans, when they come to Oxford, they expect to see the University of Oxford as one sort of big campus, but it's completely different here. There's actually 36 different colleges. Lewis's first degree was in philosophy, Greek, and politics, and then he carried on for a fourth year where he read English. That usually takes 3 years, but Lewis actually did that in a year.
Lewis recognizes that we live in a world of great sorrow. There's real reason to despair, and he doesn't pretend as if it doesn't exist. It's part of the human experience, and we need to face it.
A child will not develop if half the truth is held away from that child. So C.S. Lewis's attempt to allow us to empathize with triumph and loss, to empathize with all these extreme feelings, is the greatest gift you can offer anybody.
As things now stand in the world, sorrow is inevitable. But sorrow is a season that does not last forever.
The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe is a story about moving from winter to summer. So it's quite important that The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe starts in this land of ice and snow.
C.S. Lewis was writing his autobiography at the same time that he began to write the Chronicles of Narnia. And the first of the Chronicles of Narnia is about a land which has been in winter for 100 years. Always winter, never Christmas. And I think that the writing of the Chronicles of Narnia was the way in which Lewis thawed or received springtime in his own feelings.
It was in 1939 that on the back of another manuscript he wrote what is the first paragraph of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe.
The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe all began with a picture of a faun carrying an umbrella and parcels in a snowy wood. This picture had been in my mind since I was about 16. Then one day, when I was about 40, I said to myself, let's try to make a story about it.
And then he couldn't write. He was stymied. And it took another 10 years.
The image of Mr. Tumnus, the faun, carrying parcels under his arm, but no one to give them to because there's no Christmas. That, I suppose, you could say is an image of Lewis before he came to faith. He was a tremendously gifted individual, one of the brightest sparks of the 20th century. But what did he do with his gifts? Who could he give them to?
But then, suddenly, Aslan came bounding into it. I don't know where the lion came from or why he came, but once he was there, he pulled the whole story together.
Who is Aslan? Don't you know who is the king of beasts? Aslan is a lion, the great lion.
Is he quite safe? I shall feel rather nervous about meeting a lion.
That you will, dearie.
Then he isn't safe.
Safe? Of course he isn't safe, but he's good.
To create good characters is difficult. They are the most boring characters to write, usually. But it is an art, and Jack was exceptionally good at it.
Lewis makes good interesting. There's something very alive about Aslan, I think. You know, it's possible that people find the God that is taught in church not big enough for them. But Aslan is a huge character, and he is both very powerful but also expresses himself very gently and in subtle ways.
I think for children, illustration is extremely important. I think something just stays in your head and gives a face and a shape. Pauline Baynes was an illustrator in England when she came to work with C.S. Lewis. She was quite young at the time, and she did all 7 books, as you know. It's a classic collaboration.